Hello and welcome to my Bad Bank presentation. I created this full stack application using MERN, MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. Through the following 3 videos, I'll explain how I developed the application starting with the front-end architecture, a detailed description of the database and APIs, and finally about deployment with reflections about the whole project. Start here with a diagram explaining the overall application architecture. You can see an outline of what's contained in the front end, middle tier, and back end. It's the MERN stack. You'll also notice I containerized the entire application. I did this for compatibility and portability. Now here's the diagram of the front end architecture. It's made up of various components. The file names indexed.html, context.js, and index.js are controller components that play roles behind the user interface. The user interface is seen by users composed of the navbar, create account, login, deposit, withdraw, all data, and home.js. You're now at the front end architecture code layout. To the right, you're actually looking at a screenshot from VS Code of my actual code. And I'd like you to notice a couple of things. This is a really simple structure for the files. The working root is named app. The front end is housed in the directory public. The architecture files and many of the functions contained within utilize conventional naming and structure. There are many comments also within the code. I did all of this with the intent of making the code easier to understand and easier to work with in the future. The adage, keep it simple, and we could always add on later. We're now looking at UI styling and some code descriptions. So UI meaning user interface. So regard to styling, primarily I use Bootstrap to style it. Bootstrap produces clean, consistent results which are incredibly responsive to different viewport sizes. I also used a local CSS file to style some of the universal items such as the background image and the navbar. Colors. The primary blue of the card outlines connotes professionalism, while green is something one would expect to associate with a bank. The text is created in bright contrast to the background, so it's more easily readable. Alt tags are also used, so it's more easily accessible. The format of the application is SPA, single page application, utilizing the front end to update changes in the state. This makes the site very quickly responsive. Some of the key code descriptions, just going into a couple details about a couple of my main files. The context file. The context file returns a React component card which takes in several props and returns a Bootstrap style card. The file also imports the router and creates a user context function which provides default values for the user authentication, login, logout, create user, deposit, and withdraw. The index.html file. I think of this file as basically like a portal in a container. It pulls in links from multiple CDNs, content delivery networks, aka libraries, sets up the root, and establishes the instance of components in JSX, which is translated by Babel for the browsers. The create account JS file. This one's a little more complex, and I wanted to show some detail about React that was used from the front end. The create account JS file has the variables show, email, name, message, password, loader. It uses the use state hooks and the context hooks. The validate function sets some parameters for the input fields, and there are async timeout messages to interact with the user. There's a 5-second delay, for instance, on your account is successfully created. You can log in now. Most of this file is programmatically rendered and sets up the input fields. So state, validation, user interactive messages, and the creation of that interface via Bootstrap card are the primary purpose of the create account JS file. Thank you very much for watching the first of my 3 videos about my full stack Bad Bank app.